I recently spent some time in an Omega boutique. Doesn't matter why, not relevant to this story. But whilst I was there, I got to spend a good amount of time with the new Omega Railmasters. Good morning and welcome to Walking with Watches, a watch-related YouTube channel dedicated to the love and passion and joy of collecting mechanical, mainly, wristwatches. On this channel, I'm just a humble collector and enthusiast making his way through this crazy hobby that we call watch collecting. Never pretending to be a watch expert, just someone who enjoys these little things, the little details that make watch collecting so magnificent. So if you like your watches, if you're a humble collector, let's go, let's talk about it. Got plenty of content coming up. Got a video on my favourite G-Shock of them all, a video on what I think is the best luxury watch in the world. Got a video coming up about the brand new Grand Seiko with the iStyle. I got to spend some time with that as well while I was out and about. That's tasty. Loads and loads of content. If it sounds like the sort of thing you're into, drop us a subscribe and a like. Otherwise, let's get into these new Railmasters. Let's go. So, the Omega Railmasters. Obviously you've got two versions in this particular line. You've got the grey-black with the sunbursty faded effect dial, and you've got the small seconds with the faux patina. Of the two, I must admit, my eyes were really drawn towards the faux patinaed with the small seconds. Now, I know faux patina is one of those things that some people either really like or they don't. It's a bit divisive, but I prefer to think of it as a sort of aged brown colour rather than trying to make it look like it's older than it is. When compared to the grey version, the small seconds just pulls your attention so much nicer, and I have to admit, of the two, I was leaning towards that as my particular favourite. It's not to say that the grey wasn't a handsome watch, you know, it wore very well, its sizes were good, the movement was good, the design is good, the style's very handsome, the bracelet is certainly very comfortable. You know, they're both really, really solid watches, but when it came to the grey version, I have to admit, I did start to wonder slightly how much these were actually going to sell. So what is it you're actually getting with the new Railmasters? Well, you're getting a 38mm case, a vintage aesthetic which is trying to blend the modern with the old in the spirit of the 57. You're getting 15,000 Gauss of anti-magnetism, you're getting an in-house proprietary Omega movement, you're getting a good established brand with a good watch with very capable features throughout. One thing that the videos and the photos don't do justice to, but hopefully you can see now or draw your attention to it, is the lugs on the top end of the case. They, unlike say a Rolex Submariner or a Rolex Datejust, where you have sort of straight curved lugs, these roll slightly inwards, and it completely changes the way that the watch looks and feels. It doesn't give it that smooth across the wrist feel that I think it looks like it does in the photographs. It's very hard to articulate. I suggest you go and try it on. It's not new. Omega cases have had this before. This isn't a new design, but it certainly makes the watch feel a little bit more elegant and a little bit less hard wearing, a little bit less like a watch for the railroad. It certainly makes the watch feel like less of a tank and a bit like more of an eleganty, everyday dressy kind of watch. The whole purpose of the Railmaster when it was first introduced in 57 was it was to complete the trilogy. Now, there's so many videos and content which covers this subject, I'm not going to bore you to tears with it, but essentially it goes like this for the uninitiated. The Seamasters were introduced as the diver's watch, the Speedmaster was a racing chronograph, it only latterly became the watch that was famous for going to the moon. Actually, Omega didn't build it for that purpose. Originally, NASA didn't even tell them they were going to do it. And then the Railmaster, which was entered in to be a watch that could be highly anti-magnetic. You would imagine it being worn by a railroad worker or by some scientist working in a James Bond style lab surrounded by all sorts of terrifying magnetic fields. It was designed to be something that wouldn't have your watch movement getting magnetized. It would remain accurate even when it's exposed to all these fields, which can offset your movement inside your watch. Essentially, it's a bit more complex than that, but for the purpose of this conversation, that will do as an explanation. And this then is my kind of problem with the new Railmaster, you see, because although I think the watch is very handsome, I like the small seconds, I like the grey sunburst dial, I think the case has an elegance and a form about it which is nice. The 38mm size is contemporary and sort of tries to channel that slightly vintage vibe it's going for, particularly with the faux patina. The small seconds is reminiscent of some old school pocket watches, and it's doing a lot of things quite nicely. But what I struggle with the new Railmaster is, and this is just my opinion, I would love to hear if you disagree below, Keep it respectful though, please, guys. What I think about the new Railmaster is it doesn't really feel like a Railmaster to me. And this, I think, is the problem with the brand, with the Railmaster itself, is I'm not sure Omega necessarily know what to do with it. It's the problem child of the trilogy. The Seamaster stands out on its own. It's an icon of modern watchmaking. The Speedmaster obviously has its own identity, very heavily laden in the Apollo missions and the legitimate watchmaking history that the Speedmaster is wrapped up in with the Moon. But the Railmaster doesn't really fit anywhere. But equally, I don't think the new Railmaster really gives vibes of this is a watch that you're ever going to see a railroad worker wearing. In reality, if they're wearing a watch at all, they'll probably just wear a G-Shock. But equally, I don't feel that this watch is going to be something that you're going to be finding in many laboratories around the world either. I think this watch is being aimed as a fun, alternative, weekend watch, presumably for an existing Omega client, and it's giving you something a little bit different in your collections, which is going to diversify you slightly from other collectors because you're not going to see very many of them. It's my humble opinion though that I think this is a missed opportunity for Omega. I think with the Railmasters they need to strip it back to the very concept of what is a Railmaster for. A Railmaster is supposed to be a tool watch, it's supposed to be on labs, it's supposed to be in railroads, it's supposed to be exposed to the elements, it's supposed to be a watch that is out there being worn and doing things as a daily. And I don't mind the sizing, I don't mind the vintage aesthetic slightly, but I think if it was me editing this watch, I would try and create a watch that's a little bit more hard-wearing in the way it looks and feels. Something a little bit more, dare I say, sort of brutalist, a bit more of a hard-wearing tank that makes it really stand out from its main rival. And I'm sad to say, but the watch's main rival comes from within Omega itself. It's going to attract competition from within the brand. Whereas if they go out there and they turned the Railmaster into a watch that has its own unique identity as a tool watch for the working man, then I think the Railmaster could really step out of the shadow of its more successful trilogy cousins. But look, let's remember, ultimately, taste is extremely subjective. I think, for me, subjectively, I think the Railmaster is a handsome watch. I think it's a well-made watch. I think price-wise, it is not as expensive as some of its competitors, which I think is going to help a little bit. I like the fact that if you own a Railmaster, you probably won't come across another one organically, or if you do, it's going to be very few and far between. I think there's a little bit of individuality about the purchase, and I can really see why someone would go and do that. You're getting a really high quality watch, it's well made, it's certainly very handsome. I just think, for me personally, I'd like to see the Railmaster be a little bit braver in its design. I'd like to see the Railmaster be a little bit more willing to stand out as something which is uniquely Railmaster. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, we've got some more organised content next week. Couldn't really do the walking thing because it's chucking it down with rain. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want to see some more watch related content, this is the place for you. Hit that subscribe button. Cheers guys, you take care, alright? Peace out.